This book was banned by the Catholic Church for 200 years. Napoleon slept with a copy under his pillow. Stalin marked his personal edition page by page. And right now, the most powerful people in business, politics, and finance still read it. But most of them won't admit it publicly. Why? Because this book doesn't teach you how the world should work. It teaches you how the world actually works. And that truth is too dangerous for most people to hear. The book is called The Prince, written in 1513 by Niccolo Machiavelli. And in the next 11 minutes, I'm going to break down the 5 ideas inside it that the powerful have been using for 500 years, so you can finally understand the game being played around you. Stay until the end, because Lesson 5 is the one nobody talks about, and it might be the most relevant to your life right now. Machiavelli spent 15 years watching kings, popes, and warlords up close as a diplomat for Florence. Then, the very government he served had him arrested and tortured, and in exile, broke, forgotten, with nothing left to lose, he wrote everything he knew into one short, brutal book. Welcome to the art of summarizing. Let's get into it. The foundation of everything Machiavelli teaches starts with one uncomfortable truth. The world you wish existed is not the world you actually live in. He writes that a man who wants to act virtuously in every way must come to ruin among so many who are not virtuous. In other words, if you always play by the rules in a world where others don't, you will lose. Every time. That's not cynicism, that's observation. And everything in this book flows from that one brutal starting point. The first great lesson of The Prince is what Machiavelli calls virtù. And it has nothing to do with being virtuous in the moral sense. In Machiavelli's vocabulary, virtù means something closer to force of will, the ability to act decisively, adapt rapidly, and impose your intention on reality. Think of it as the opposite of passivity. He contrasts it with fortuna, fortune, which he describes as a flooding river. When fortune is against you, it sweeps away everything in its path. You can't control it. But here's the key insight. You can prepare for it. He says fortune controls about half of our actions, but leaves the other half to us. The leader with virtù builds the walls and the canals before the flood comes. The passive man waits and gets swept away. This is why Machiavelli is obsessed with preparation, with anticipating problems before they become crises. He writes about the Romans constantly, because Rome's secret wasn't reacting well. It was seeing problems coming early and acting before they became fatal. The second lesson is the most famous and the most misquoted idea in the book. Is it better to be loved or feared? Most people think Machiavelli simply says, choose fear. But that's not what he writes. What he actually says is this: it is best to be both loved and feared. But when you cannot have both, and in the real world you rarely can, it is safer to be feared than loved. Why? Because love is held together by a chain of obligation, and men will break that chain the moment it costs them something. But fear is held together by the dread of punishment, which never leaves. However, and this is critical, Machiavelli draws a hard line between being feared and being hated. A feared leader who is also respected can survive almost anything. A hated leader cannot survive anything. The moment the people turn against you, every conspiracy succeeds. Every enemy finds allies, and every ally abandons you. The third lesson, the lion and the fox. Machiavelli says a prince must know how to use both the nature of the beast and the nature of man. But specifically, he must be both a lion and a fox. The lion frightens wolves, but the lion cannot see the traps. The fox sees the traps, but the fox cannot frighten wolves. You need both. The lion represents raw power, the willingness to use force when necessary, to be decisive, to dominate through strength. The fox represents cunning, the ability to read situations, deceive when needed, and avoid the traps your enemies set for you. Leaders who are only lions get outsmarted. Leaders who are only foxes get eaten. The greatest leaders in history, the ones Machiavelli studied closely, were the ones who knew exactly when to be which. The fourth lesson hits different when you understand who Machiavelli was writing it for. He says, a prince must never rely on mercenaries. In the 1500s, most Italian rulers hired professional soldiers, mercenaries, to fight their wars. It seemed smart. You don't have to train an army, you just pay for one. But Machiavelli watched this destroy Italy, repeatedly. Mercenaries, he writes, have no real loyalty. They fight carefully, avoid real danger, and the moment they're losing, they disappear. Or worse, they switch sides. He says, if you win with borrowed strength, you haven't really won. And if you lose, you've lost everything, because you have nothing of your own to fall back on. The deeper principle here applies far beyond armies. Any power that depends entirely on external support is fragile. Whether it's a business built on one client, a career built on one person's favor, or a reputation built on borrowed credibility. The moment that support shifts, you collapse. Build your own foundations. Always. The fifth lesson is about flatterers, and it's the one most relevant to anyone in any organization today. Machiavelli says courts are full of flatterers, and the reason is simple. People love to hear good things about themselves, and they tend to punish the messenger who tells them the truth. So everyone tells the leader what he wants to hear, and the leader, surrounded by comfortable lies, makes terrible decisions and doesn't understand why things keep going wrong. His solution: create a specific group of people whose only job is to tell you the truth, especially when you're wrong. Reward honesty, punish flattery, and ask questions constantly. He writes, good counsel comes from the wisdom of the prince, not the other way around. If you're not wise enough to recognize good advice, no advisor can save you. So let's bring it all together. What Machiavelli actually wrote underneath all the controversy is a survival manual for a world that doesn't reward naivety. Understand reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Build strength from your own resources. Balance force with intelligence. Stay feared without becoming hated. And always, always, protect yourself from the comfortable lie. 500 years later, none of that has changed. The Prince is not a book that tells you to be evil. It's a book that tells you to be honest about how the world works, so that you can actually navigate it. If this summary gave you something to think about, subscribe to The Art of Summarizing. We break down a new book every week, and drop a comment. Which lesson from The Prince do you think applies most to the world right now? I want to hear your answer. See you in the next one.